And and if we look at the protein content of selected foods, you can get a really good idea of why it's not that difficult to get to where we need to be. So here you've got the amount of protein found in a variety of plant foods. And you can see we get about 15 to 30 or 31 grams of protein in a cup of soybeans, 3 ounces of veggie meat, a half a cup of tofu, a cup of lentils, or a cup of other legumes, with the soybean and veggie meats and tofu being sort of at the upper end. Tofu, depending on how firm the tofu is, higher amounts in firmer tofus, but that's about the same amount as you get from 3 ounces of meat, poultry, or fish in the 15 to 30 gram range. And then if you look at other plant foods like whole grains, seeds, nuts, you're getting somewhere probably around 6 to 13 grams in a serving. So a quarter cup of hemp seeds gives you about 13 grams. A cup of cooked kamut spelt or wheat berries will give you 10 to 12 grams. A quarter cup of pumpkin seeds, about 10. A cup of amaranth, about 10. A cup of quinoa, about 8. Cup of soy milk, around 6 to 8. Most nuts are about 5 to 8, and a cup of oatmeal, about 6. This is not much different than what you'd get from 2 eggs or a cup of milk or an ounce of cheese. So you definitely can get enough protein by eating a sort of a mix of plant foods. And what we also, another way of looking at it is humans need about 10 to 15% of calories from protein. And if we look at the amount of calories from protein in plants, it's quite telling. So for example, we would get about 30 to 65% of calories from protein in veggie meats. We get about 35 to 44% of calories from protein in soy foods like soybeans, tofu, and tempeh. We get about 11 to 24% of calories from protein in pumpkin seeds. And in other legumes, other than soybeans, tofu, and tempeh, it's about 20 to 30% of calories from protein. In grains, it's about 7 to 17% of calories from protein. In non-starchy vegetables, about 10 to 40% of calories from protein, with dark greens being at the higher end of that range. Nuts, about 8 to 14%. The only foods that consistently fall close to or below that 10% level are starchy vegetables at about 7 to 12%, and fruits at about 2 to 12%. So fruits are really the one food that will fairly consistently be on the lower end of that spectrum. So now this is important. Just because a food has a high percentage of calories from protein does not mean you'll get enough protein from that food, because some foods are so low in calories. And here's just an example. So we get about 39% of calories from protein from ground beef, and 1 patty or 3 ounces of ground beef has about 22 grams of protein and 223 calories. Well, from spinach, we get about the same amount of calories from protein, about 39% of calories from protein. But to get enough protein from spinach, we would need to get the same amount of protein from spinach, we would need to eat 25 cups of raw spinach, or about 4 cups of cooked spinach. To get that same 22 grams of protein, we get about 175 calories from that. Now, this is not the case for all foods. So there are a lot of foods like legumes and tofu that are much more concentrated sources of protein. So if we compare tofu versus ground beef, well, you remember we got 22 grams of protein from a 3-ounce patty. Tofu contains about 41% of calories from protein, and just over half a cup, or 0.55 cups, provides us 22 grams of protein. So it's not such a large amount. Plant-based eaters generally get enough protein unless they get insufficient calories. And people will get insufficient calories if, for example, small children who are eating really high fiber diets and get full too quickly and just don't eat enough calories. or people with eating disorders who are purposefully restricting the calories they eat, people with illnesses that cause anorexia, that cause a lack of appetite, essentially, may not get enough calories, and people who are very poor and just can't get enough food, or who are, you know, in a famine situation, will not probably get enough protein. And plant-based eaters get enough protein unless their diets are poorly balanced as well. That's sort of reason number 2. And we see this on occasion, not that often, but we see it. We see, you know, for example, teenagers who eat, you know, the double order of fries and soda, you know, they're eating junk food diets. They may not get enough protein. Tea and toast diets, which can be common in seniors, and then fruitarian diets where people are eating mostly just fruit. And the final reason is people that fail to meet their increased needs. So seniors who have very low energy intakes or very poor appetite, or pregnant women with morning sickness who just can't eat, they may not get enough protein either. So how do we ensure sufficient protein in plant-exclusive diets? Well, number 1 is to supply sufficient calories. Make sure we're eating enough food. That's not an issue for most of us. Most of us are eating more than enough calories, so not a huge challenge. And we can do this by including at least one protein-rich choice at each meal. So, you know, things like beans, lentils, split peas, tofu, tempeh, edamame, other soy foods, veggie meats, seitan, nuts, seeds. You know, all of these foods can contribute. And the other thing we can do is to include some lower fiber choices in the mix, like tofu, soy milk, peanut butter, seitan, veggie meats, especially for those that have more difficulty with digesting or getting enough protein, like children and seniors. And the other thing we can do is to select milks with non-dairy milks with 6 to 10 grams of protein per cup, like pea or soy milk, instead of the very low protein milks like almond milk, for example. And then we can aim for, you know, I would say aiming for at least 2 and preferably 3 servings of legumes daily. And it doesn't mean you have to eat 3 bowls of beans. Legumes can mean peanut butter or soy milk or tofu, or, you know, there are lots of ways of getting legumes into the diet. Oh, sorry. Oh, there we go. We can, one of the things that I would suggest is to just get inspired by cultures that rely on legumes as dietary staples. Most of us didn't grow up eating lentils and tofu. They're not staples in the North American diet. And but we can get wonderful ideas from places where legumes are staples in the diet, like Asia, which uses soybeans and red beans on a regular basis. Africa, which uses cowpeas, pigeon peas, lentils, and chickpeas. Central and South America, where they use a lot of pinto and black beans. India, where they use a lot of lentils and chickpeas. And the Middle East, where fava beans, chickpeas, and white beans are commonly used. Americans average 9.3 grams of legumes a day. That's less than a tablespoon, and it's about 1/10 of that of the nations that use legumes as dietary staples. So we have a long way to go in improving our intakes.